Good evening everyone, welcome to an Aussie Cyclone Chasers update tonight, the 19th of November 2013. My name's Chris Nitzo. We'll be taking you through tonight some amazingly active Northern Australian weather coming up. Before we do get into our update, once again I would like to put the feelers out for any businesses or potential advertising partners that would like to advertise with us and get their brand out there and get their name out there. We are a very fast growing group and we will only get bigger as the season goes on and more people cotton on to what we do and how we assist people and how we actually document tropical cyclones. So we do require your support in doing that, whether that be an individual support by say clicking on an advertisement that you like that might be on our website or clicking on an ad in our videos, or if you own a business or know of a business that could be willing to partner with us and get their brand out there, please let us know about it. Please get in contact with us. Right, let's get into this update. Hello tropics, and look at this. Courtesy of Weather Zone, this is the infrared satellite imagery over the past 24 hours. We have a constant group of storms here over the Indonesian region and the East Timor region. We have a big trough system in through Central Australia. We have a very active upper level feature here over northern Queensland. It's been well modelled this, and we've known this is coming for many days now. In fact, our update early last week was telling you that this was going to happen this week. So it's all been very well modelled and it's all going to plan. What we're not quite sure of in the future is the effect this monsoon trough, believe it or not, we have a monsoon trough up here in the middle of November. I can't remember the last time that's happened. Don't get too caught up in it though, because it may not last here for very long. We still have a fair bit of convergence going on in the northern hemisphere, so therefore the trough is likely to duck back up there once this active period is over, before it comes down for the wet season in later in December. So currently the area of interest is right in here, and inside that is a much smaller and more elongated area of interest. And what's going on there is that we have basically a trough system in through here, and in and along that trough system we have another more elongated trough in a north-northwest to south-southeast direction, and in that region where they meet we've got this very weak little low, and now that low isn't a very closed in tight circulation. It's just there, and it's just a feature, a very weak feature. But what it is doing is it's moving it towards the east or east-southeast very rapidly. Sorry, not very rapidly, but pretty rapidly to the east-southeast in this direction. Now, the modelling at the moment does not develop this into a significant tropical low or tropical cyclone, but I would like it noted that the Bureau of Meteorology has slightly upgraded its potential for development on the weekend and Friday, late Friday, to a low instead of very low, so that gives it up to a 20% potential of forming into a tropical cyclone before hitting land. At this stage, unless it does something it's really not expected to, it shouldn't form into a tropical cyclone, but should hit land as a weak low, a weak to a moderate low. And with that, what will happen is as the low hits the land somewhere in this region, what it's going to do is it's going to enhance these northwesterly winds coming in on its northern side, and it's going to actually bring in a monsoonal flow and a convergent northwest to northeasterly flow here. And what we're going to do is we're going to see a hell of a lot of rainfall starting to fall on the eastern top end. The Gulf country going to be inundated with rain, and the peninsula region of Queensland all the way down probably to even as far south as Mackay is going to see a lot of rain, even that rain extending and spreading inland as well. So good rainfall here, and I'll show you what the rain estimates are. Now at this stage, as I say, the low here is not expected to form into a cyclone, but stranger things have happened. We'll go through now where the low is and what its expected movements are. So right now, this is where our low is. It's just to the southwest of Denpasar, well to the northwest of Broome, and well to the northwest of Broome. And what we're seeing is that, as I said to you, it's along basically a double trough line here. This trough line pushing in from the northwest to the southeast, and the monsoon trough, which is up here, pushing more in a east-west direction. So we've got it. We've got the system developing a fairly elongated center, and because it's so elongated, it's unlikely to develop rapidly, if at all, over the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, if we look at currently the location of the center around this region here, we can see this purple here is this very dry air. Cyclones need this blue coloring, this very moist air throughout all levels of the atmosphere if they're going to grow. Now, we've got very dry air coming in off the Pilbara coastline out into the Indian Ocean. We've got extremely moist air here associated with a monsoon trough, and so we can see that if it remains along that trough line and stays away from the dry air, things are pretty favourable for it to develop. However, the other thing we've got to take into account is wind shear. Now, as long as it remains along that trough line, we've got this red colouring, which means there's almost zero wind shear in that area, which is fantastic for cyclones. So currently, its big issue is the fact that it's elongated, so it doesn't have a central low pressure system, and the other big issue for it obviously is that dry air that I showed you. But wind shear is absolutely not a factor in this particular system at all. So let's track this system through to tomorrow morning, and we'll see that it really doesn't get itself going too much at all. This is at OOZ. We can see the system still very elongated, so you can't really draw a big circle, tight circle into this system. You can see it's still part of this overall trough system here, and you can see there's no real defined center, so it hasn't really developed and can't develop while that's happening. As we head towards 10 a.m. on Thursday morning, we see that the system, once again, it's trying to get itself going. You can see that it's got decent winds coming out of the northern edge, but really it just can't get itself into a tight circulation. It just remains very troughy as it approaches the Kimberley coastline, and so we're not seeing any real development of that system. Now, if we go back and look at humidity by Thursday morning, we can see that it's now getting really tight. It's getting very close to that extremely dry air, anywhere south of Broome, and in a line basically northwest of Broome. So if we look at a line here, this is all extremely dry, so anything that tries to get going anywhere near that is going to die very quickly. But if it can remain north of that point, and if it can remain out here, so if the models are slightly incorrect and it moves a little bit further to the north, the chances are much greater, so in the vicinity of say 20 to 30 or 40, even 40% for the system to actually get itself going. If it gets too close to this dry air, it's got no chance. Now, if the other thing we need to look at, once again, wind shear by Thursday morning, and we'll see that as the system pushes more to the south, we'll see shear has started to increase, but not too much. It's not disastrous. So you've still got really low wind shear out here. If it heads further to the north, it's going to be encountering almost zero wind shear. But out here where it is now, it's encountering sort of 15 to 20 knots of wind shear, which is going to work against it as well. So going back to the winds of the system, we can see that the system remains in this region here, about 15 knots of shear, and getting very close to some dry air. So that's Thursday morning. As we get to Friday morning, we see the system hasn't really tightened up, and it's now getting very close to land. So the land interaction here is going to limit any potential it does have of getting itself going. But look, we're still getting 15 to 20 knot winds on the northern side and on the western side too. Just nothing on its southeastern side here as we get closer to the coast. So the system's still remaining very elongated. As we head towards Saturday morning, we'll go to, we can see the system now adopts a more northeasterly track and keeps itself off the water. We still see 15 to 20 knot winds surrounding the northern semicircle of the system, nothing to its south still. So remember, to be a cyclone, it needs to have at least 35 knots of wind, more than halfway around the center. Now, as we go towards Saturday night, We can see it here. It's just one big troughy mess as it hits the coastline. Now look, if it pushes a little bit, as I say, a little bit further north than what the models are predicting, then we might be in business. We might have the chance of getting this into a reasonable, at least a reasonable low, if not a very, very weak TC. But a reasonable low would be great. Now, this system here, as it pushes in towards the western top end or far northern Kimberley, very close to Darwin, you can see there's Darwin where my cursor is, and you can see that by Sunday afternoon the system will push onshore right around Darwin. Now what that will do is that'll enhance these northwesterly winds, so you can see these winds coming through here and pushing in very, very strong at 15 to 20 for this time of year anyway, very strong, 15 to 20 knots, even getting up to 25 knots there, northwesterlies, which is what you associate with a monsoon around about December rather than, as I say, this early. In the meantime, while all that fun's happening in the northwest, over the Gulf country we're seeing a very, very moist northerly to northwesterly airstream hitting the Gulf country here in the western Cape York Peninsula, causing amazing amounts of rainfall in this region. We're seeing a north to northeast flow on the Queensland coast, very, very moist, causing a lot of rainfall as well. And so what we're going to see through this period, we've even seen a very, very weak circulation forming in the southeastern Gulf by Sunday night, Monday morning, and we see because that circulation's too close to land, it doesn't get itself going. But we'd see these 15 to 20 knot northwesterly winds coming all through the Gulf. Now we don't see that this time of year, it just doesn't happen most years, so it's very, very surprising to see that. And look, it's going to create a lot of rainfall, and so by a lot of rainfall, and we can see here that low, or that circulation just meanders around the southern Gulf, and so as long as it stays there, we just keep getting this northerly airstream pumped into northern Queensland, pumped into the Gulf, and we continue to have this monsoonal airstream pumping into the top end of the territory. So just rain, 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 rain the whole time, and possibly storm activity as well throughout the next 7 days. Let's have a look at what the Bureau thinks is going to be the sort of rainfalls we're looking at. So tomorrow we see that low pressure and the associated monsoonal trough with it pushing a little bit further to the east, so we see this rainfall starting to push east with it. Gulf country, very, very moist northerly airstream pushing into the western Cape Gulf, plenty of showers, plenty of storms, plenty of patchy rain in this area and even the eastern top end. As we go to Thursday, we're going to continue to see heaps of rain over the western peninsula, getting into the central peninsula, even parts of the southern peninsula. This low pressure system or trough system continues to push further to the east, so that rainfall will continue to spread eastwards. We've still got shower and storm activity all through the Northern Territory. We'll push further to the south. This system here continues to push eastwards, so getting closer and closer to the coast by Friday. As we said, it doesn't actually hit the coast until Sunday or Saturday night to Sunday. And then we've got this an increase in rainfall here over northern Queensland and inland Queensland, getting to the point where we're looking at 50 to 100 mils in one day there on the Friday in parts of the North Queensland region. And we've also got that rain extending into central and southern Queensland, so we've got a lot of rain coming, folks, and that's only the start. What you're seeing here is only the start of the entire process. This is Saturday now. Saturday, that low and trough system are getting close to the Kimberley or the western top end, so we're starting to get those stronger rainfall totals on the western top end, far northern Kimberley. This rain continues here in a monsoonal airstream. As I say, probably not a true monsoon, or I mean you could argue both ways, but really the effects are the same. The effects of this are exactly the same as what you get in the monsoon anyway, so whether it is or it isn't, who cares? Really, it's going to create the same issues. Very, very heavy rainfall over a prolonged period of time. So we've got 25 to 50 mils basically everywhere over the northern parts of Queensland, getting as far south as about Bowen. We've got good rainfall inland along its surface trough as well. So we've just got massive amounts of rain coming. So let's have a look for the 4-day period, the first 4-day period. So this is from today until the 22nd. So I mean, this is before things get hectic, and you're already seeing 50 to 100 mils everywhere over the northern parts of Australia, 25 to 50 if you're unlucky, and also over here over the Indian Ocean, as that low tracks eastwards. The next 4 days is where things get hectic. and here's where we see the big rainfall totals. So we're starting to see that western top end in that monsoonal airstream. You're starting to look at 50 to 100, maybe even more than that, millimetres over that 4-day period. The northeastern top end getting a lot. That rain filters inland a long way in here, so we've got a long way down south into the Northern Territory. We're going to see good rainfall. Over the western peninsula, we're going to see some phenomenal rainfall here, 200 to 300 millimetres in that 4-day period, possibly with some of the modelling predicting a southeastward moving low pressure system over Queensland. We could see some of that rain really extend inland and give this area, once again remembering that this area in here, this area in this region here is all drought declared, so any rain that can get into that region is great rainfall because they just have not had it. This is so different to last year. Last year, this time of year, there were places in here that hadn't had a millimetre since March, so this is a huge contrast to what we experienced last year. So it's great rainfall potential over the next 8 days. So if we look at over the next 8 days, sorry, the next the next week all up, we're starting to see some huge rainfall totals building up here, 300 to 400 millimetres on the Western Cape, 200 millimetres fairly likely throughout the northern half of northern and far northern Queensland. Phenomenal rainfall, folks. Just off the coast here, a little bit of a trough dip / low forming just off the north tropical coast. Some of the models predict, and if that happens, well, then you guys know what to expect over here if we get a little bit of a trough or a low forming in this region. Not cyclonic in nature, just a very, very weak circulation possibly forming in this area will create amazing amounts of rainfall if that happens. So overall, people, all I can say is we are going to get smashed with rain because of that, and because of the fact that things are getting much more active now. We will be issuing video updates nightly until things quieten down. So at this stage, that low is not expected to form into a cyclone, but if it can maintain a direction a little bit north of where the modelling is predicting, and it can tighten up, then its chances do increase as we get into the weekend, just before it hits land on the western top end, or less likely over the northern Kimberley. So the only places missing out, unfortunately, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news to anyone in the Pilbara, you will miss out on all of this action. There is a fairly clear marked line here where there's no moisture to the west of it, and you could see that when I showed you the relative humidity graphs. That's why this low pressure system up near Indonesia has to remain very, very well north of that dry line. There's just a really, really phenomenal dry line here just to the south of that system. If that low tries to get anywhere near that dry line, it'll just die very, very quickly. And that's what it was expected to do about 5 or 6 days ago, and it didn't do it. It stayed too far to the north, and because of that, it still maintains some life. So if it can stay the further north that low stays, the more chance it has of forming into something more significant than just a weak system. But regardless, the big issue with that system is it's going to create the monsoonal conditions over the entire parts of northern Australia once it hits the coast. So once it hits the coast, we're going to see this massive amount of northwesterly to northeasterly convergence zone all over the northern half of the continent. Alright folks, thanks for watching. As I say, tomorrow night we'll issue another one, and we'll try and keep them a bit briefer because this is an active event, and if we do issue them every night, we won't have to go into this much detail. Alright, thanks for watching tonight, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Good night.